Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. My name is Kelly Cleland. I am a Customer Success Manager and Try This at Work leader. I'm excited to be walking you through a couple of really great features. So first up, I'm going to be talking about rolling task management of our double-decker event. And I know a lot of you are probably wanting to see the new task, and unfortunately, I can't quite show you that. But I am going to talk about how in your organization, individuals, especially I think those that are from a first line worker perspective, those that are in the field, can really take advantage of Microsoft Planner within Teams. And I'm going to show you how there's transparency, visibility, and productivity leveraging Planner today. And then in addition to that, up next, I'm actually going to be showing you how Microsoft does live events. I'm going to be heavy into the component of leveraging Yammer, which is how Satya does his live Q&A events, monthly events. I am going to briefly touch on some of the other events, but those are topics that I've already covered in the past. So I don't want to do any repeating, but I do think that there's some really great information embedded there you may have not heard before. In addition to that, I had posted this little tidbit out in LinkedIn prior, but I'm also going to show you how with just a standard Microsoft Teams live event, I want to speak to how you can get the multi-video view in just a regular live event like I'm having right now. To facilitate your town hall type events, because clearly we know from a production standpoint, these very large productions with typically when producers are involved and switchers and encoders, we know that while people are returning to work, those are a little far off from now. But regardless, the best practices are great to follow. So that is a topic that I will be covering later today, 12:30 to 1. Okay, so before we get started, just brief housekeeping reminder. Again, this is, for those of you, this is a public live event. So for those of you that did authenticate through 365, I may be able to see your email address. But again, I don't pull those reports on my side after the end of the event, and nor do I share that information with everyone. So just for compliance reasons, I just want you to know in no way, shape, or form while I look at or leverage your data today. For those of you that didn't authenticate through, you're completely fine. Everything's anonymous. Feel free to ask questions as we go along here. I'll try to check the panel there and see if I can answer anything for you. But with that, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing because I want to flip over. So give me just a second to pull my screen up here. All right, here we go. So Microsoft Planner, for those of you that don't know what it is, Microsoft Planner is essentially a very lightweight task management tool. So it's very much like if you've ever used a Trello type board, those of you that are used to seeing, any Scrum boards or Kanban boards, it's very similar to that, but it's very business user friendly. And specifically, right, that's why Planner was designed, is because, from a project management standpoint, a lot of those, or even, within Visual Studio, a lot of that is just very heavy, too heavy for your average business user. Planner really makes it very user-friendly in terms of the interface, in terms of creating tasks, assigning tasks, bucketing tasks into categories, even reporting on tasks. So it's a fantastic way for individuals essentially to be able to track the flow of information and tasks to completion throughout across members of their team. So you can see here that I've got my Contoso Town Grand Vista Resort. So I'm just going to use the hotel example again in this case. And this is specifically the guest services task board. So, I want you to think creatively in terms of how this may apply in your organization for rolling task management. But this is a great example because we know that, in hotels, they're running 24/7 and there are shifts and there's constantly shifting of people that are coming in and out based off of their shift, and they have to have awareness of what's going on. So the guest is always in the forefront. They're always aware of anything that is in progress or is yet to be done, or even that has been completed from a past shift that they may have been involved in. So it's really important to have that transparency across the team. So in this case, the entire guest services team, and even beyond that, could potentially have access to this daily task board for guests to create that transparency and that visibility. So in this case, what you're seeing here, and I'm just going to expand on this and make it bigger just for you to have a better view. So you can see here with the little green icon that's Planner. And when you set this up inside of a team, by the way, it's really easy to create a planner board. You are just simply adding a tab, a planner tab here, and it's going to ask you basically, create a new task list, so give this a name or use an existing. So maybe you have one that's been created already. So I'm just going to go back to my expanded view here. Now inside of your task board, you have the options to add new buckets, or what are the categories. So in this case, right, we're talking about checking guests in, we're talking about their experience, we're talking about any requests that they may have. So really it's up to you to determine, what is it that you need to think about? What is it that we do on a daily basis? What are the types of things that we're tracking, and categorize those? So in this case, the example that we have here is, delayed check-in, any guest requests, early check-in, and guest experience. And you could certainly add a new bucket just by simply clicking this and giving it a new bucket name. So in this case, I'll say pool requests. Because, with COVID going on, of course, there's a lot of tracking that needs to be done to ensure compliance. So in this case, I'll just add pool requests, and it was as simple as that. And so if a guest calls in to guest services and says, I would like to request a pool reservation, it is as simple as me clicking on add a task, so I can say, maybe this is Mr. Roberts calling again, and he wants to reserve the pool from, 11 to 1 p.m. And that is for today. And then I can add that task. I can also go in here and actually click on the task. So if I need to input additional information, I can actually come in here and I can color code. And again, these can be, these color tags can be categorized. So right, they're just showing the name here, but I mean, I could actually come in here and make these labels whatever I want. In addition to that, I can add, start date or due date. So depending on what the task is, maybe for early check-in, maybe that's something that's happening later in the week or this weekend. Progress, if this is started or not. In this case, we're just going to leave it as not started, and the priority of this task as well. In addition, you could type a description. So maybe Mr. Roberts is asking for a particular section of the pool. So just put in here, section A2, and actually I can choose to show that on the card. So now you'll see here to the right that section A2 is appearing. In addition to that, you could add any checklist items. So here, I'm not really going to add any, but I'm going to show you just how easy they are to add. And I could even show those on the card if I wanted to as well. In addition, if I had to add any attachments, I could certainly do so. And then any additional comments if somebody, wanted to comment on that. So again, I could also assign an individual, in this case for pull requests, maybe it's just for tracking, for calendaring purposes and to keep account of requests for the day and sections, and then we can report on that. But in this case, I'm not going to assign an individual to the specific task. But the nice thing about this as well is that when you talk about assignment, when you're talking about rolling task management, so based off of who's in the shift, it could be that, like in this case, a delayed check-in. So this one is specifically assigned to Barry. So Barry, you could either assign this task to Barry, or Barry, he's a part of the guest services team, could come in here and assign himself. So that way, any task that someone's actually picking up to take care of, if it is in progress or not, and then any additional information that you may need to see. So it's really nice because anyone that's in guest services is going to be able to come in here and say, or if they're off shift, they could also unassign, but potentially based off of comments within this. So C-suite is empty, housekeeping is cleaning now, we'll be ready for early check-in. Well, Avni's getting ready to leave on her shift, so Deborah came in here and picked it up from her. So clearly this is something that started with Avni, but because of this shift change, it is now Deborah that came in and decided to pick this up and make sure that the room 615 for the Carter family was ready to go before the 2:30 arrival. So that's when I talk about rolling task management, this is really what it's about. So one of the things that I want to show you here, I'm not going to go, too deep here into task management. Clearly, you can see here when you check something as complete, and again, it's as easy as hitting that or to pull it back. Again, very easy also to move, drag and drop and move things around as well. Anything that's completed, of course, will show as completed. And in this case, right, this is actually showing completed by a former member of the team. So maybe, this is a case where, this specific individual, Melissa, actually, she's now a manager, she's not in guest services anymore. So it's showing completed by a former member of the team. So it's really nice, again, in terms of visibility and tracking and making sure that your guests and your customers are at the forefront, or even if we're talking in a manufacturing instance, for example, that these tasks are being tracked. So whatever it is, whatever you may need to do in terms of production line and what's being manufactured, there's full transparency and visibility across the board with anyone that's coming in and out of shift. So really quick, I want to show you just some other things here. So you can do groupings on, for the daily task as well. So maybe you're just specifically looking at assign to. So you can see here that it shifts and it actually categorizes the columns based off of the assign to. From a progress perspective, not started, in progress, completed. And again, everyone that's logged in can have their, individual view of what they need to see. So everyone can use these filterings to hone in on the view that's easiest for them to digest. So I'm just going to take it back to the bucket because usually I would say this is probably the most common. So this is actually your board view. But you have other views that you can use. For example, here's the list view. And some people like the list view more than the board view because it's easier to read for them. Again, it's completely up to user. It's completely preference. But this works the exact same way in terms of adding a task. And so you're just designating what bucket it's in, and you can sort and filter on these columns any way that you need to. So again, it makes it really easy to see the information that you need to from a reporting perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and click on charts here. The nice thing about this is that just from a roll-up perspective, this allows, I would say, maybe it's guest services managers to essentially be able, at a really high level, be able to see a snapshot of any point in time of any of the tasks, from any of the statuses, how many tasks potentially are late, how many tasks are left, just to be able to get a really quick, easy read of, without even looking at the board and looking, or like, hey, listen, we have 4 late tasks. Like, clearly this is an optimal guest experience. I need to hone in and specifically see what these tasks are and click into these and find out. So really nice from a manager view perspective to kind of get this view and see it as a quick snapshot. Some people, however, actually like to have the calendar view. And the calendar view, really you have a week and a month view. Again, you can look at different months. It's really up to you in terms of the information that you need to see. But this also allows you essentially to add tasks. Again, lots of views for you to get to the information you need to see what you need to see in the way that you need to see it, because we know that every individual digests information differently. So Microsoft wanted to make sure that there were multiple views and multiple ways to filter and sort that will allow the end user to see information and digest it in a way that makes sense to them. So really, that's it from I personally myself like the board view, but I think that's just my project management and some of my Scrum background of seeing the boards. But that's really it from a task management perspective. Again, this is not something that's complicated, and this is rolling task management. A lot of times, just to think about it even from a corporate perspective, because we're talking about it from a shift perspective, even from a corporate perspective, when I'm talking to my customers, a lot of the ways that these planner boards are used is around projects. So making sure that there's visibility across the board, right? If anybody's ever seen a Microsoft project plan before, a lot of times most of the business users can't read those. They include so many tasks, people get overwhelmed. It's just a lot of information. This is, again, if you're talking about a marketing initiative, maybe that's happening, or even I showed this when I did the presentation, about the virtual job fairs, right? So that's a project, it's a job fair that you're planning for. You want to make sure that everyone's assigned to their task, everybody knows what they're doing, when the due dates are, and making sure that you're marching towards that end goal of whatever the case may be. Sorry, child on the other side. Okay, so what I also wanted to show you is, again, this is all within Microsoft Teams. So as I flip back to my actual team, what's fantastic about this is that it doesn't matter, right? From a housekeeping perspective, from a maintenance perspective and engineering here, right? They have their own task. So you can have as many tasks as you want to have, task boards, as you want to have inside of your individual teams or channels. So in this case, it's the Contoso Town Grand Vista Resort as a whole. And again, engineering has their own, guest services have their own, hotel managers can have their own, and housekeeping. It really is up to you. And you can have more than one task board, by the way, assigned inside of this channel as well. So just to let you know, like, you're not just actually limited to one. So if there is a need, like maybe this is daily task for guests, right? Because that's your rolling task management for guest experience. But then maybe you have a daily task that is things that from a internal perspective within guest services, the department itself, maybe there's additional tasks that have to be done within the team. So you can actually have 2 task boards available to you inside of your team based off of the way that you need to work. So again, it doesn't have to just be one. Okay, so in addition to that, the last thing I just wanted to show you as well is that clearly, right, this is just Planner that's pulling inside of Teams. The benefit of having everything inside of Teams is that you're reducing the number of clicks that you have to go through to actually, get to the information that you need. But clearly here you're seeing an option to actually, you can go to the website and open this up actually inside of Planner itself. So if you log into office.com, for example, let's say maybe one of your peers happened to log into office.com and they actually went to Planner already and had already started a Planner board. Clearly, that's where you have the example of being able to pull in an existing board. So this is what it looks like inside of the browser. Again, it really, if I click back here, you're really not seeing anything any different here. I'm seeing all of my plans that I'm attached to here. These are all my recent plans that I have access to, or specifically, these are my tasks. But for the most part, again, most users are going to be honed in on whatever their particular task board is. So it's kind of nice, I think from a planning perspective, at least until task rolls out and we get that all up roll up. Keep in mind, again, I promise I will show you that when it's here. It's coming very soon. I absolutely promise. I just can't quite show you that right now. But in the meantime, again, please continue to use Planner from a task management perspective. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and stop presenting because really that's the bulk of it. This one's a quick one. There's not a lot here, so I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stop presenting for the moment, and then I'm going to flip back over and see if there are any questions. So just give me a minute here, and I'm just going to. I just want to flip back up the slide. Thank you all for hanging on with me. Okay. And back to my slides. All right. So let me see if anybody has any questions, again, as I'm getting the screen pulled back up here in my view. If anyone has any questions about this, please feel free to submit into the Q&A box. I'm checking it right now. I don't see anything coming through yet because I think that this honestly is pretty self-explanatory. So if you do have any questions about rolling task management or about how you can leverage it inside of your organization, there's so many different scenarios that I can share with you. I have customers using this across the board. And honestly, every time that we have trainings and we're showcasing this feature planner inside of Teams to customers that are new using Microsoft Teams, which is just a lot of people now, but every time I've ever showed it to business users, they absolutely love Planner inside of Teams. It's just making their lives a lot easier. Again, marketing campaigns, projects, project management, being able to templatize and actually have leveraging the Teams template and being able to essentially reproduce the same project template over and over and over. Project managers love that. And again, having that business interface as well, which was difficult in the past. And again, there are some bridge connectors. There's connectors between Microsoft Project and Planner. FYI, that's a whole other subject, so I'm not going to go too deep into that, but just know that it exists. So again, a great way for you to utilize Teams, get your business involved and engaged, making sure that your teams are productive, making sure that your customers and your guests are at the absolute forefront of your business, right? Because we know that they are the most important. And again, just making sure that even from a, change of hands perspective, there's that full transparency across the team. Every individual is held accountable. It's just a great way to facilitate, how you're doing business and how you're getting tasks done. So with that, I don't see any questions coming in, so I'm hoping that that's a good sign that I covered everything that you may want to know. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. If you just want to hang on.